Alright, so for today's video, we are going to be taking a look at the Klein Tools 85191HD Flip Socket Conduit Reaming Driver. Now this is, at the time of filming this video, a relatively newer tool from Klein. It pretty much takes their old conduit reaming tool and kind of, I would say, upgrades it a little bit. Kind of makes it a little bit more in line with the version that Milwaukee has to offer, except for the reaming tool on this guy actually comes out of the handle, whereas the Milwaukee one just has the 1/2 inch, 3/4, and 1 inch reamer and the interchangeable bits and a couple nut drivers. So here is the Klein version of that. I guess you could say they kind of took some inspiration from Milwaukee. Now, like most of the Klein screwdrivers, you have that nice soft rubbery handle. Now, one thing that I have noticed about some of the newer multi-bit drivers, not necessarily the USA made ones, or I should say the USA made screwdrivers, but more the Taiwan made ones, is the rubber handles do, if you put a lot of torque on them, they do tend to slip and want to come off. So that is one thing to see if in the future, if you use this a lot, if that is going to happen. But like most Klein tools, you have the Klein tool name, which is stamped in the rubber of the handle. And then if you rotate the tool around, you have your model number. And then you also have some safety warnings that are going to tell you that the tool is not insulated. You know, wear safety glasses and things of that nature. And then I believe you also have a production code or a production date there in the rubber of the handle too. And then if you come to the top, so if you had a bunch of different Klein screwdrivers in your bag and you wanted to identify them, they all have this little indentation there on the plastic that is filled in with some white paint to identify the screwdriver or the tool that you are looking for. And this is the Reamer Driver. Now, one thing to note about this paint is if you use the tool a lot, the white paint does start to tend to wear off over time. So that is just something you are going to want to keep an eye out for. Maybe put some white paint on there and smear it off and make it re-indented or whatever. Just to make sure that you always have the identifier there, especially if you're rocking a lot of Klein tools. Now, coming to the business end of the tool, you have your spring release, which you can take the handle off, and you have your reaming tool itself. Now, let's say you don't want to use this handle, and you wanted to maybe just chuck this into your drill and give it a go. This is impact ready and impact rated, so you can insert this into an impact driver if you so wanted to do so. Now, like I said before, this reaming tool will do from 1/2 inch all the way up to 1 inch, so you're going to get 1/2 inch, 3/4, and 1 inch. Now, a cool thing about these Klein reaming tools is these the reaming knives are replaceable, and they believe they sell it in a pack of 2, so you get 2 reaming knives. And I believe you get an Allen wrench to take out the little Allen screw that is there on the side, so you can slide this guy off and slide a new one on. I believe that the replacement kit is going to be the same reaming knives as it is for the older reaming tool from Klein. So we'll go ahead and clip that handle back on, and this is I guess you can call it a quick insert collet, so you don't have to pull back on the spring-loaded mechanism there. You can just kind of insert it there onto the tool. Now, coming to the front of the tool, this guy does have a couple nut drivers. You have a 1/4 inch and a 5/16, and this guy is also removable, so if you wanted to, you could just use the tool like this, and let's say you wanted to use this in a drill or keep this in your drill, you could, or you can put it all in and make a fairly long tool. So that is a nice little feature there. I'm not the biggest fan of these flip sockets from Klein. My really big complaint about them is especially when you're working on a ladder and you put you put the bit in one of the holes on the ladder, you got to pull it out. These bits do tend to pull off fairly easily. That's one of my big complaints about them. I'm not sure why I can't get this bit to go back in. There we go. And then with the Klein nut drivers, they are 3-in-1, so you can move the you can see it right here. As long as you move the nut driver up to there, you can use it as a for a 1/4 inch bit to be inserted into the end of that and use it kind of as like a screwdriver or a bit holder. Now, this guy comes with a number 2 a number 2 square. So when you're working with those EMT fittings or those conduit fittings, you can use a square, or if you have some of the other Klein tools, you can use a Phillips or a slotted or whatever you choose to tighten those fittings down. So that's pretty much it for the detail on the tool. I guess we can get to some of the functionality of the tool. So like I said, I have some conduit fittings here, and that number 2 square does fit fairly nicely into there. And will allow you to tighten the screw down onto your conduit. So that's it's a nice little fit. And it's interesting that they chose to go with a number 2 square over the old version of the tool, which I will bring in here. This is the older version of the tool, and in the older version of the tool, it's just one giant slotted. So this one, I guess if you wanted to change it out, you possibly could. If you wanted to go rock a slotted, ECX or a combination bit or a Phillips, you could easily change that out, whereas the old one, you don't really have that adjustability. So they're pretty much identical. The model numbers on them are fairly the same. The only thing that makes it a little bit different is this one is made here in the US and this one is made in Taiwan. And you obviously have a little bit more features on the one made in Taiwan. But from my understanding, Klein still does sell these. I believe you can still find them in Lowe's to this day. So we'll go ahead and set that guy off to the side. Now, another cool feature about this tool is this shaft will actually go down a half-inch conduit, and it'll obviously go down 3/4 and 1 inch. So that is a nice feature. So if you were reaming out some half-inch conduit, which I have right here, you don't necessarily have to take this entire bit off to ream, so it'll just kind of go in there, and then you can just deburr the outside of that pipe fairly easily, and then you just take that tool out. I pretty much only work with half-inch conduit. I don't really work with 3/4 or 1 inch. Again, I'm not an electrician. I'm just a heating and cooling guy who does commercial and industrial. And a lot of times we run our control wiring in half-inch EMT. So that's pretty much the biggest that I would say that I go. I don't really run 3/4, and I'm sure not going to be running 1 inch. So with that being said, that's kind of about all I have for this video. Like I said at the beginning, this is a relatively newer tool from Klein. It is available from several different places, so I will leave quite a few links down in the description below if you are looking to pick this guy up for yourself. And there will also be a link to the product page that will take you right on over to the Klein website if you want to find out some more information about this tool. But with that being said, that's all I have for this video. So if you have any questions, comments, concerns, please feel free to leave them down in the comment section below. And as always, thanks for watching.